Hello, everyone. Welcome to Decked. My name is Tyler, and with me is my friend Ray.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. I was mesmerized by what was going on the screen. I realized that I was taking apart from a previous game and I was starting to reset it. I was like, what am I doing?
No. We here on Decked, we like to play tabletop games for your amusement, come back and comment on them, talk about what we were thinking, what we were doing. In this case, you're seeing a friendly game of Call of Cthulhu, the card game, that was played during a tournament, during some downtime, that was held at Brap's Magic here in Burlington, Vermont. On the left, you see our friend Carlo, who's playing a Syndicate deck with lots of criminals in it. So many criminals. And on the right, we have Ray playing his deck.
Yes, I'm playing my Hastur deck, and I apologize. Like, seriously, people, I would stop talking about Hastur a little bit, but with where everybody was sitting and what was going on that day, it just ended up being that I was playing this deck constantly. And yes, this is a friendly game, but Carlo specifically asked if he could play against the deck I was playing in the tournament because he wanted to see how his deck held up against a more controlling strategy, even if it was a very soft controlling strategy that I was playing. Based on the speed at which I built the deck.
Yes, this is the famous 20-minute deck.
Yes, the famous 20-minute deck. And I would say, don't worry, guys, I'm not going to talk about Hastur a lot, but it's going to happen. It's just...
We're just going to analyze every nook and cranny of the King in Yellow.
Yeah, we are. Or at the very least, this 20-minute deck, the fact that we're going to spend 4 episodes on a 20-minute deck is quite hilarious to me. But
it's important that when you're part of the iterative process and you're iterating forward, you reflect on where you failed and how you failed forward.
This is very true.
To synergize all your buzzwords.
And I'm going to say right now that this deck has already been taken apart. It has been cannibalized for cards for other things.
I think you learned from it, though.
I did learn from it, and actually the deck that I cannibalized from, it was very... it's got a lot of the same themes in it that this deck does. This is a very strong opening turn for me. I just played San Servolo, which makes it night and gives me the ability to, when a character goes insane, I can have the controller of that character force another character to go insane unless they pay 1 by exhausting San Servolo. I got the 70 steps, which means if you have no 1-story cards in your story pile, then your characters come into play exhausted. And I also got the Enchanted Wood out, which if you control more Dreamland support cards than any other character, terror icons do not prevent characters from going insane.
Right.
Now, as he's playing Syndicate, there's not going to be much terror iconing going on over there. Regrettably, right. This would have been a much better opening hand against a monster faction deck than it was against this deck. But having the stuff come into play tapped definitely slows down a Syndicate deck.
Especially with Jacob Finnegan, because he excels at placing extra tokens.
He does. And as you may have seen on Carlo's turn while I was explaining what my cards do, Jacob Finnegan did come into play, as did... I don't know what that other card is.
That is the Pit Boss from the Clover Club.
The Clover Club Pit Boss,
who grants everybody willpower, which makes it really problematic for you.
Right. It does make it very problematic for me because I got rid of the terror icons, but I didn't get rid of the willpower, and the willpower will keep characters from going insane as well.
I should specify he grants criminals willpower, which is basically every card in that deck.
Right. I just played Keeper of Dreams, and... you've seen him come out in a couple previous episodes if you've watched it, but just as a refresher, he's a monster creature independent. He's villainous, and I can exhaust him to remove willpower from a character unless that character's controller discards a card at random from their hand. So I can get around the willpower right now, which is pretty impressive, honestly, the fact that I can get around willpower and terror icons at the moment.
But you have to pick your moment.
Exactly. And he has to be ready to not exhausted because of the steps.
Yep. And so Carlos just appears to be in the process of immuring the 70 steps.
I do believe he is, yes.
Immuring is a pretty powerful Syndicate card where you pay 0, but then you drain your highest resource domain to put the other a character or support card under the domain of the controller.
Correct. Under one of the domains of controller's choice.
So something that was in place essentially turns into a resource because they got bricked up in the cellar.
Which is a great idea.
It's a great card to play. It's really frustrating when it happens to you.
It is relatively frustrating when it happens to you, although I have to say it's a lot less frustrating when it happens to your support cards than when it happens to your characters.
Right.
Hatchet Man just came into play. Hatchet Man allows you to choose a icon struggle when you are at when you go to a story with him, and that is counted up by skill as opposed to by icons. In this case, he chose investigation, so he got his investigation. He got a success token for being unopposed, for the investigation, for winning the skill check, and then Jacob Finnegan gave him a fourth one. So on that turn, with me not having anything to oppose, he dropped 4 tokens onto a single story.
Yeah. It's kind of beastly.
It is. Here's Victoria Glasser. She's going to drive something insane. The Hatchet Man apparently just went insane.
Is that possible with the pit boss?
Are we sure that's the pit boss?
I am 90% certain that's a pit boss. I think that's the pit boss.
Is the Hatchet Man a criminal?
He is.
Okay. I have no idea then. Apparently we played that wrong.
And there's a Bedlam Boys on your side now as well.
There is a Bedlam Boys on my side, which when a character I control goes insane, I can draw a card, limit once per phase. I know none of you can see this, obviously, because this is a recording about what's... We're all watching the same video, but right now Tyler is holding up a pit boss card in front of his face, trying to compare it to the image on the screen to see if that really is a pit boss or not.
It's like sketching your own thumb. That's not what they do. They use the thumb to gauge proportion. I don't know if
gauge proportion, generally, yeah. But if you're sketching your own thumb, you kind of have to do that too, so...
Yeah. I might not have understood the joke when you wind up seeing the canvas of somebody's thumb.
Yeah. might have gone over your head a little.
Yeah. So that was probably a misplay. No worries.
Yeah, no worries. It really didn't affect anything because, I mean, outside of the fact that the Hatchet Man is not going to be ready on this turn. He's been restored, but he's not ready.
Carlo's ramping up rapidly to something.
Carlo is ramping up rapidly to something.
Although he did go 2-2-1 before getting to 3.
This is true. He's actually, it's 3-2-1 is a solid place to be. There's Mr. David Pan.
Mr. David Pan is like Hatchet Man on steroids.
He is.
Causes all combats or all struggles to be resolved based on skill instead of icons.
Correct. And for those of you that have been watching deck for a while, you will know that I have a deck that it's a Hastur and Syndicate deck, mainly Syndicate with a little bit of Hastur thrown in, where I use Mr. David Pan to great effect. In this particular case, going up against Mr. David Pan definitely makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. It's all about perspective.
We like him a lot less. Carlo has decided,
that makes a lot more sense.
Don't want to front load onto this story where I already have 4 success tokens.
I was very puzzled by that choice, dogpiling that many characters in to take a token.
So now we're going to go over here. We're going to do it over here. So.
Yeah, I've found I've played against his criminals deck a great deal lately, and I find I'm often in that position of suddenly he's got 4 tokens on all 3 stories.
Yeah.
You don't realize it's happening until it's happened.
Right, and it's just he's now at 4 on 2 stories, and he chose his investigation icon to get or not his investigation, but his arcane struggle win to get Mr. David Pan ready.
Who's just always somebody you want to have ready.
He really is. He's a very strong offensive and defensive card.
Someday I will know the joy of playing David Pan. I have not yet.
Yeah, why haven't you?
It's so many new toys. David Pan's old.
Gotcha.
Denizens of the Underworld is old in a way.
Denizens of the Underworld is old. I just had an idea. I should build a David Pan Savio Corvi deck just to make just to make everything horrible. Not that it would matter.
Everything is ruined forever.
Everything is ruined forever. Although the abilities of those 2 characters don't really synergize with each other.
No, I had briefly hoped that Savio was somehow immune to David Pan's rule bending, but it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way. So adding the terror icon really doesn't do anything.
Yeah. And it was like, how would that even work? It's like, well, Savio's icons count and everybody else is counting skill? What?
Yeah, exactly. That would be strange, to say the least.
What are you doing here, Ray?
I have no idea. I am...
Are you playing some sort of shell game?
I am, apparently. There we go. I think I probably knocked my cards on the floor or something stupid like that.
Very narrow table.
Very
That's
narrow
like
table.
2 inches on either side, and that'd be fine.
Yeah, but also remembering the space we were playing in, 2 inches on either side of that table means 2 inches less for us to sit in.
Yeah.
We barely had room to push a chair out from the table.
We were in a very intimate nook.
Yes. We were in an alcove. It was an alcove. So, for those of you not paying attention,
Carlo is ramping up to 4 cards on a domain because he's throwing down O'Banion's Inner Council.
yes,
A further bane of my life in the criminal milieu.
yeah, I don't
Care for it?
in my syndicate deck I do not play it, and I do not care for it at all. Although I'm going to be interested to see something going forward here, because I was reading the card earlier and I was like, oh wait, that actually makes a difference. So I want to see if it actually made a difference in this game before I say what I realized earlier.
Mm-hmm. But basically, its skill, the O'Banion's Inner Council skill is based on the number of criminals in play.
Right.
And it shuts down the skill of anything with lower skill.
Right.
Not icons, it shuts down skill.
Right. Don't count the skill of, or don't count the icons of a character with skill less than O'Banion's Inner Council, is how it's worded. And in this particular case, it's, if I'm not mistaken, is that how it's worded?
Yeah, characters with lower skill than the Inner Council committed to that same story do not count their icons at that story.
Gotcha. So I was looking at it and I was curious, because it doesn't say opponents' characters at the same story. It's just characters at the same story. So
that's true.
Your own characters. I mean, obviously it wouldn't matter with Mr. David Pan if he was going in, and in this case it doesn't matter either, because he's going with Jacob Finnegan, and Jacob Finnegan has no icons of his own. So.
But that's a great point that I hadn't realized.
Yeah, and it's something I was very curious about, whether it ever made a difference in this game. This game went by really fast in comparison to some other games. He's choosing not to lose willpower on O'Banion's Inner Council, I do believe. Probably what I was aiming to try to make insane. And I caused him to discard a card at random from his hand.
Well, I mean, it feels like a sorry second place, but at least you're sort of depriving him of something when you do that.
Exactly. Well, it's like, all right, I'm going to get rid of your willpower. Oh, okay, I'm not. But you're discarding a card at random from your hand, so I can't be too that upset.
Yeah, but Hastur really could use just a solid no willpower.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that yet?
Actually, the
Not Scalpel.
No, not Scalpel, but in the 1,000 Young box set, there's the location that if you reveal a lunatic at the top of on your deck, you get to drive a character insane regardless of willpower or terror.
That's pretty good.
And then there's some cards that are when a character comes into play, it immediately goes insane, which the cards have to come into play insane is how it's worded. It's a card that forces other cards to come into play insane. And that actually gets around willpower and terror struggles as well, because they don't have them yet when they're coming into play.
But that's still to be published, right?
No, actually, I want to say that was how the Avatar worked. I could be wrong about that.
Okay,
though.
I thought that was one of the spoiled cards for the Mark of Madness.
It could be one of the spoiled cards.
Because I remember the preview article pointing out, before something hits the table, its protections don't count.
Right, and that very well might be it. Because the Avatar makes it so that non-Hastur characters committed to the same story as the thing in the yellow mask, which is the name of the Hastur avatar, lose willpower and a terror icon if able.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting to note, it's not a printed terror icon, and it's only one.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually gets around all the terror icons that Savio puts out occasionally.
That would be handy. And certainly, it seems most characters will generally just have like the token single icon.
Right.
It's Hastur in particular where you find you have multiple terror icons.
Exactly. Ancient ones tend to have multiple terror icons,
right.
But that's just the nature of the ancient ones. So.
You got to have the 5 icons. There may as well be some terror. Let's throw some terror in there.
Exactly.
Same way most ancient ones get a token arcane.
Exactly. Something to ready it, because there's constantly a threat of an ancient one there. And I'm playing more Bedlam Boys.
And you passed the turn.
And I passed the turn, yes. He's sitting on 3 stories with 4 tokens on him right now.
See, it sneaks up on you.
It does. Although this didn't really sneak up on me. I kind of watched this come at me pretty fast and hardcore. So
It's only been 15 minutes or so.
it has, yeah. And he's...
Look at him. He's just ramping.
Yeah, I don't know what he's ramping for now. 4-2-1 is probably pretty good.
He hasn't played Naomi yet. That would really be the crowning issue.
This is true.
Let's do an Eldritch Nexus.
Yes, because we need to have yet another.
Because one of the staples of that deck is he has not yet thrown down a Torch Singer.
Right. He did just concrete and chains my Keeper of Dreams, and then he played
Naomi,
yeah,
which will start recycling his tactics.
exactly. In particular, Immurement is the big one that tends to get recycled with Naomi.
Immurement is huge.
And now we got the Inner Council, and going at one of the stories, we've got
David, Pan, and Jacob going for the center.
and Hatchet Man and Naomi going for the final one.
Whatever struggle he's chosen for the Hatchet Man.
Right.
Is the Pit Boss going in?
No, I think he's been keeping the Pit Boss safe because the Pit Boss, I think, gives all other criminals willpower, and it doesn't have willpower itself. So he's been keeping it from...
Pit Boss will grant every criminal, including itself, willpower.
Well, then he's keeping it safe from the Long Dead Prince.
Probably a good choice. Although, I mean, there's so many skulls on his side that...
It really wouldn't matter. I understand that.
You'd need a Tommy gun.
I would. All the Hastur characters need are Tommy guns. It was a previous episode reference.
Visit youtube.com/deckshow to find out that and more.
Yes.
What's going to happen? Something's happening.
I'm going to Holly's directive something. Naomi?
Cancel the Hatchet Man, perhaps?
Catches the Hatchet Man's thing. He can't go insane, though.
Yep. I'm really glad that Driven Insane thing is just a Benny and not a requirement of the effect, because that would stink.
Then that card would be horrible.
It just needs a then draw card on the end, and I would really like it. All for one.
All for one. Yes.
Cancel a character effect, drive him insane, draw a card.
Yes. Drive him insane if able.
Sure.
Draw a card.
No, it should be ignore willpower.
And ignore willpower, yeah. For one. You know what? That's overcosted.
Very
Zero.
reasonable.
0.
0, no steadfast?
0, no steadfast, exactly. Let's make it neutral.
Can we invent a new faction for that card?
Yeah, just a single faction. It's only its own faction.
In fact, it gives you an extra resource.
That's right. And drains all of your opponent's domains.
While this card is in your discard. Oh, and
that's the end of the game. Yep,
that was a sweep.
Yep.
All right, so that was a quick match, which worked out because we were still in the middle of the tournament at the time.
Yes.
But I want to thank you, Ray, for coming back.
Hey, no problem. No problem.
Yeah,
I like talking about losing with my Hastur deck.
You've been able to look back and you've learned so much from it.
I've learned so much from it, like times when I play things wrong, and that I'm mildly obsessed with Hastur.
Yeah, but I think you're going to play out your reception at some point, and I see you sort of arcing into Cthulhu Shub-Niggurath at some point.
Maybe, I don't know.
We'll
see.
But everybody should subscribe to Decked on youtube.com/deckshow, and you'll find out what Ray's next deck is going to look like.
That's right.
Thank you. We'll talk to you next time.